My name is Elena, and the night the architecture of my family's deception finally collapsed, it didn't begin with a scream. It began with a delicate chime of crystal against crystal. My mother, radiant in her delusions, raised a glass of vintage Pinot Noir, a bottle I knew my sister couldn't actually afford, and delivered the sentence that would sever the cord of my compliance. "To Chloe," she announced, her eyes beaming with a pride that felt like a physical weight on my chest. "For being the rock of this family, successful, poised, and completely independent. Unlike some, she doesn't need a handout to survive. She stands on her own 2 feet." The room didn't just go quiet. The atmosphere evaporated, leaving behind a vacuum where the truth was suddenly fighting to breathe. My fork hovered inches from my lips, a trembling silver bridge to nowhere. I looked at my mother, her face a mask of smug satisfaction, and then I shifted my gaze to Chloe. My sister sat across from me, the golden child, bathing in the adoration like it was sunlight, accepting a tribute she had not earned. None of them knew. None of them suspected that for the last 24 months, on the first of every month, I had been wiring $3,500 directly into Chloe's account, just to keep her house of cards from blowing over in the wind. Successful, independent, doesn't need a handout. The words were not just insults. They were a rewriting of history. Each syllable felt like a slap across a sunburn, stinging and hot. My cheeks flushed, but for the first time in my life, the heat wasn't born of shame. It was the molten temperature of pure, unadulterated rage. My mother, oblivious to the grenade she had just unpinned, added the final twist of the knife. "You see, Alina, some people are just born with the drive to succeed." That was the moment the levees broke. Something ancient and subservient inside me shattered. I pushed my chair back, the wooden legs screeching against the hardwood floor like a banshee, a sound so harsh it made my father flinch. I forced a smile onto my face, but it felt tight, sharp, like a shard of glass cutting into my gums. "You are absolutely right, Mother," I said, my voice terrifyingly steady. I didn't look at her. I locked eyes with Chloe, watching the blood drain from her face as she realized I had gone off script. It is truly inspiring that she doesn't need help from anyone. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the roast chicken I would never eat, and dropped the payload. Since she is so independent, my monthly transfers of $3,500 and today. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of silence that usually precedes a car crash. Chloe's face went the color of old paper. My mother's smile faltered, twitching at the corners as her brain tried to process a sentence that didn't fit her worldview. My father, who had been pushing peas around his plate to avoid conversation, finally looked up, his eyes wide. For the first time in a decade, I was the center of attention. They had no idea that this single sentence was about to dismantle the mythology of the golden child they had worshipped for 28 years. If you want to witness the anatomy of a family's destruction, if you want to know how one line of truth can burn down a lifetime of lies, do not look away. After that dinner, I didn't wait for the explosion. I walked out. I drove home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, my mother's voice looping in my skull. "Unlike you. I am 28 years old. I am a senior analyst. I own my car. I have a retirement fund. And I have been quietly hemorrhaging money to support a sister who treats me like a disappointment." The cognitive dissonance was nauseating. As soon as I crossed the threshold of my apartment, I dropped my keys on the counter and pulled up my banking app. The screen illuminated the dark kitchen. I scrolled and scrolled, month after month, a river of currency flowing one way. Dozens of transactions, tens of thousands of dollars. Money that could have been a down payment on a house, money that could have been a trip to Europe. Instead, it was loaned to Chloe. How many times had I lied to myself? It's just a rough patch, I'd say. She's in a transitional period. She always had a story, a tragic opera of victimhood. The industry is cutthroat. The clients are late with payments. I'm on the verge of a breakthrough. Why, if she was the titan of industry my parents believed her to be, did she need my salary to keep the lights on? The truth settled in my gut like a stone. I hadn't been helping her. I had been financing her superiority. I was the backstage crew making sure the star looked good in the spotlight, and I wasn't even listed in the credits. Memories began to kaleidoscope in my mind. Childhood birthdays where my good grades were a footnote to Chloe's participation trophies. Parent-teacher conferences where my stability was boring and her chaos was creative genius. Why can't you have your sister's spark? That was the unspoken model of our household. Perhaps that was why, when she first called me sobbing 3 years ago, claiming she was short on rent because of a payroll error, I had said yes instantly. I was buying my way into the role of the good daughter, but charity had metastasized into extortion. I thought about the vague descriptions of her career. Whenever my parents spoke of Chloe's job, it sounded like a brochure for a corporate utopia: high-rise views, executive decisions, fast-track promotions. But whenever I asked Chloe for specifics, the answers were smoke. "You wouldn't understand the nuance of corporate politics," she'd say with a dismissive wave. Or, "It's complicated, but the bonus structure is insane," followed immediately by, "Hey, can you wire the funds a day early? My liquidity is tied up in investments." How does a person with tied-up investments need cash for groceries? I realized I had spent years averting my gaze because the lie was easier to swallow than the reality. That dinner had ripped the blindfold off. If she was thriving, my money shouldn't matter. So why did she look like a person watching their parachute fail to open? I lay awake that night, the streetlights casting long prison bar shadows across my ceiling. I needed verification. I needed to know exactly what I had been purchasing for $3,500 a month. I needed a witness who wasn't drinking the family Kool-Aid. My mind landed on a name: Mark. He was an old college friend of Chloe's, someone who had drifted to the periphery but stayed in touch. He wouldn't have a reason to protect the family myth. My heart hammered against my ribs as I found his profile. It was late, but the urgency clawed at me. "Hey, it's Elena. I need to ask you a question about Chloe. It's important. Do you have time to talk?" I hit send and stared at the pixels. Was I about to confirm my suspicions, or was I about to uncover something far darker? His reply came with jarring speed. "Hey, Alina. Wow, blast from the past. Sure, coffee tomorrow?" My stomach twisted. This wasn't a social call. This was an investigation. The next morning, the cafe was noisy, filled with the hum of espresso machines and chatter, that inside our booth, the air was cold. Mark smiled as he sat down, casual, unsuspecting. After the requisite small talk, which tasted like ash in my mouth, I cut to the bone. "I need to ask you about Chloe's job," I said, my voice lower than the surrounding noise. "My parents won't stop talking about this high-powered executive position she has. The big firm, the promotion track, the corner office." I paused, gauging his reaction. "I've been sending her $3,500 a month for 2 years to support this lifestyle. If she's doing so well, Mark, why is she broke?" Mark's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. He blinked, confusion warring with shock. "You've been sending her what?" He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Elena, she told me you helped her out occasionally with birthday money, but that's a salary. That's insane." "So what is the truth?" I pressed, my nails digging into the wood of the table. "Is she at the firm? Is she a manager?" Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Elena, she hasn't worked at a firm in 3 years. She got let go for attendance issues and has been bouncing between freelance gigs ever since. She calls herself a consultant, but mostly she's just floating. I never heard anything about a promotion. Definitely nothing that matches the fantasy you're describing." The world tilted slightly. Fired, floating, unemployed. "But the apartment," I stammered. "The clothes, the brunches." "It's all image," Mark said, his eyes sympathetic. "She always felt the need to project success. The designer bags are probably rented or put on credit cards. But Elena," he hesitated, looking away, "there's something else." "Tell me," I demanded. "I'm already drowning in it. Just tell me." "She complains about you," he admitted softly. "She tells people our age that you're financially controlling, that you hold money over her head to make yourself feel powerful. She says you're jealous of her spirit, so you try to buy her obedience." The air left my lungs. Jealous? Controlling? A bitter, jagged laugh escaped my throat, startling a woman at the next table. "Let me understand this," I hissed, tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness, but from fury. "I work 60-hour weeks. I sacrifice my savings. I cover her rent so my parents don't worry. And in return, she paints me as a villainous, jealous sister who uses money to manipulate her." "I'm not saying it's true," Mark said quickly. "I'm just telling you the narrative she's spinning. If you hadn't told me the amount, I would have thought you were just spotting her lunch money." I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and shoved the screen toward him. "This," I said, my voice trembling, "is what spotting lunch money looks like." Mark stared at the column of red numbers. That is messed up, Elena. She's bleeding you dry and bad-mouthing you while she does it." The drive home wasn't a commute. It was a war council. I wasn't just hurt anymore. Hurt is passive. I was strategic. If Chloe wanted to live a lie, she was going to have to finance it herself. And if my parents insisted on worshiping a false idol, I was going to make sure they saw the cracks in the gold paint. I spent the evening archiving everything. I went through her social media, screenshotting every geotagged luxury dinner, every hard-earned vacation, every new handbag. Then I downloaded 2 years of bank statements. I printed them. The stark black ink on white paper looked like an indictment. I didn't call to warn her. An ambush requires the element of surprise. When I arrived at her building the next day, the lobby mocked me. Marble floors, a doorman, a chandelier. It was a temple to excess, and I was the reluctant donor. I rode the elevator up, the heavy file of evidence burning a hole in my bag. Wasn't coming as a sister today. I was coming as a creditor. Chloe opened a door, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my car insurance. Her smile was bright, practiced, and utterly hollow. "Elena, I wasn't expecting you. Come in, come in." The apartment was a showroom, not a single thing out of place, no sign of the struggle she claimed to be enduring. "Nice place," I said, my voice flat. "Business must be booming." "Oh, you know," she laughed, a tinkling, fake sound. "Grind never stops, but it pays off. Mom and Dad are so thrilled about the new account I landed." "I'm sure they are," I said, walking to the coffee table and clearing a space amidst the art books. "Maybe you can explain the economics of that new account, because I spoke to Mark." Her smile flickered, a glitch in the matrix. "Mark? Why would you talk to Mark?" "To check the references of the investment I've been making," I said. I pulled the stack of papers from my bag and dropped them onto the glass table. The thud was satisfyingly loud. 2 years of transfers, $42,000. My money, your account. I unlocked my phone and began swiping through the screenshots I had prepared. "And here we have your business trips to Cabo, your client dinners at Nobu, your work wardrobe. Tell me, Chloe, which part of this looks like a struggling artist? Which part justifies taking money from your sister while you tell the world I'm a controlling monster?" Her face went ashen. "This is insane," she snapped, her voice rising an octave. "You're stalking me? You're obsessed with me? This is exactly what I mean about you being controlling." "I am controlling," I agreed coldly. "I am controlling the narrative now. You told everyone I was jealous. You let Mom stand there and call you responsible while I paid your rent. You stole my reputation along with my money." "I didn't steal it," she shouted, pacing the room. "I was drowning. Do you know the pressure I'm under? Mom and Dad look at me like I'm the Messiah. I couldn't let them down. I had to keep up appearances. I just needed a bridge until I made it big." "A bridge is temporary," I countered. "This is a lifestyle. You aren't drowning, Chloe. You're floating on a raft made of my savings, and you have the audacity to resent the raft." She slammed her hand on the counter. "So what do you want? You want to humiliate me? You want me to crawl?" "I want the truth," I said. "Are you employed at the firm?" Silence stretched, tight and brittle. Finally, she looked away. "No, I haven't been for years. I didn't get the promotion. I got fired. I panicked. I lied. And the money?" I asked. "Rent, credit cards, keeping up," she mumbled. "And now it stops," I said. "The Bank of Elena is closed, permanently." Panic, real and jagged, finally broke through her arrogance. "You can't," she whispered. "Rent is due in 4 days. I don't have it. I will be evicted. You can't do this to family." "Funny," I said, turning to the door. "That sounds like a problem for someone who is successful and responsible. You should tell Mom. I'm sure she'll understand." "Please," she begged, grabbing my arm. "Just 1 more month. I swear I'm close to something real. Don't tell them. They don't need to know." I pulled my arm away, disgusted by her touch. "That is the problem, Chloe. They should have known years ago. If they had seen you clearly, maybe you wouldn't be in this mess." I walked out. The adrenaline was coursing through me, making my hands shake. But beneath the fear was a strange, intoxicating clarity. I held the power. The only question remained: how scorched earth was I willing to go? I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice was chirpy, oblivious, wrapped in that sickening denial she wore like a coat. "Elena, darling, you really should be kinder to your sister. She called me, sounding so stressed. She says you're being difficult about some loan. She's under so much pressure with her promotion. They're giving her huge responsibilities. You could learn a thing or two about her work ethic." I stared at the phone. Even now, Chloe was spinning the web. She was banking on my silence. She was betting that I was still the good daughter who would swallow the insult to keep the peace. She bet wrong. "Mom," I said, cutting her off, "we need to talk. Tonight. Your house. Tell Dad. Tell Chloe she needs to be there." "Why?" my mother asked, her tone shifting to worry. "Is something wrong?" "Yes," I said. "Something has been wrong for a very long time. You just refuse to see it." That evening, the dining room felt like a courtroom. My father sat at the head of the table, looking weary. My mother fluttered around, nervously adjusting napkins. "Chloe is running late," she said. "Work, you know." "She's not at work," I said, opening my laptop and placing it in the center of the table. "We don't need her to start." "What is this?" my father asked, frowning at the screen. "For the last 2 years," I began, my voice steady, "I have been supporting your successful daughter to the tune of $3,500 a month." My father looked up, confusion etched into his features. "What? Why?" "That's impossible," my mother scoffed. "If anyone was helping anyone, it would be Chloe helping you. She's the high earner." "Look at the screen, Mother," I said, turning the laptop. The spreadsheet was undeniable. Dates, amounts, recipient. These are my accounts.
That is her name. It lines up perfectly with every bonus she told you she got. Every raise was a withdrawal from my savings. My parents leaned in. I watched the denial fight against the data. My father's face hardened. This is a lot of money, Elena." "It's a second salary," I corrected. "She told you she was a manager. She told you she had clients. The truth is, she's been unemployed or freelancing for pennies. She used my money to rent the apartment you brag about. She used my money to buy the gifts she gave you for Christmas." My mother shook her head, tears forming. "No, that doesn't sound like her. She's driven." I clicked to the next folder. "Driven to do this?" I showed the photos. The beach clubs, the handbags. Caption: "Treating myself." Reality: Elena paying for it. The front door opened. Chloe breezed in, bringing a gust of cold air and expensive perfume. "Sorry I'm late. The traffic was—" She froze when she saw the laptop. She saw the expressions on our parents' faces. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. "We're reviewing the books," I said. "Since I'm the primary investor in Chloe Inc., I thought the shareholders should know the truth." "Megan, stop," she hissed, using my middle name, a childhood trigger. "What are you doing?" "I'm done," I said. "I've shown them the transfers. I've shown them the lies. Tell them, Chloe. Tell them about the big firm. Tell them about the promotion." My father stood up. He wasn't a tall man, but in that moment, he looked towering. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Did you lie to us about your job?" Chloe looked from him to me, trapped. I exaggerated," she stammered. "I had interviews. It's competitive. I didn't want to disappoint you." "You told us you were a manager," my mother whispered, clutching her chest. "You told us I didn't need to worry about you." "I was going to make it true," Chloe cried, the tears coming fast now. "I just needed time. If Elena hadn't cut me off, I would have fixed it." "Do not blame your sister," my father snapped. "You had time, you had her money, you used it to play dress up." "I was building a brand," Chloe shouted. "You don't understand how the world works. Image is everything." "Image is nothing if it's built on fraud," I said. "You made me the villain, Chloe. You told people I was jealous while you picked my pocket." My mother looked at Chloe, and the heartbreak in her eyes was devastating. It wasn't anger. It was the death of a dream. "All those times I compared her to you," she whispered. "All those times I told Elena to be more like you, and you were living off her charity." Chloe broke. The facade crumpled. She slumped into a chair, sobbing. Ugly, gasping sounds. "I'm sorry," she wailed. "I'm sorry."
I just couldn't handle being the failure. Please, Mom, Dad, help me. I can't pay rent. I'll lose everything. She looked at me, eyes pleading. Elena, please, just a few months. I'll pay you back. The room held its breath. The old patterns were trying to reassert themselves. Save her. Be the good one. But I looked at her and felt nothing. The resentment had burned itself out, leaving only a cold, hard boundary. No, I said. I am not your safety net anymore. If you want a life, build it. I am done funding your delusions. So that's it? She spat, venom returning. You ruin me to make a point? I didn't ruin you, I said, picking up my laptop. I just turned on the lights. I walked out of that house into the cool night air. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted, but for the first time in years, I felt light. The aftermath wasn't cinematic. It was a slow, grinding reality. Chloe lost the apartment. She moved into a studio in a gritty part of town. My parents stopped bragging. The family dinner ceased for a long time. My mother would call me, her voice tentative, asking how I was, really asking, not just waiting for a pause to talk about Chloe. My bank account grew. The first month the transfer didn't go out, I stared at the balance. It was surplus. It was freedom. I paid off my car. I booked a trip to Japan. I started therapy to unpack why I had allowed myself to be a doormat for so long. 6 months later, Chloe texted me. Can we talk? Coffee? My treat? It's cheap coffee, don't worry. I met her at a diner. She looked different. Her hair was pulled back, no professional blowout. She wore jeans and a t-shirt. She looked tired, but she looked real. I'm working at a logistics company, she said, stirring her black coffee. Entry level, data entry. It's boring as hell. But it's real, I said. It pays the rent, she admitted, barely. I sold the bags, most of them. She looked up at me, and her eyes were clear. I was angry at you for a long time, Elena. I thought you were trying to destroy me. I was trying to save myself, I replied. I know, she said softly. And thank you. I wouldn't have stopped. I would have drained you until there was nothing left. I know you would have, I said honestly. We aren't best friends. We don't braid each other's hair. The trust is gone, and it may never fully return. But we are sisters again, living in the same reality. I learned something vital that year. Revenge isn't always about malice. Sometimes the most brutal, vindictive thing you can do to a narcissist is simply to force them to live by their own means. I stopped playing the supporting character in her tragedy and started being the protagonist of my own life. If you were in my shoes, would you have pulled the plug? Would you have watched your sister's world crumble to save your own future? Or would you have kept paying the price for peace? If you've ever felt like the invisible sibling, or if you've ever had to set a boundary that set a forest fire, tell me your story in the comments. And if you want more stories about people reclaiming their power, shattering illusions, and finding the strength to walk away, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next chapter.